This podcast has been produced in partnership between Diverse Learners and the Workforce Disability Equality Standard team to explore the lived experiences of disabled staff working in the NHS. Hello everybody, here I am again with a podcast called A Conversation With. I'm Kerry Pace from Diverse Learners and this is in partnership with WEDS, the Workforce Equality Disability Standard. So our conversation with today is with Hen. How are you, Hen?
Yeah, I'm as well as I can be in these interesting times, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. We've got a frosty morning here, so I'm wrapped up and I know Hen quite well as I supported Hen in their degree. We've been talking about pyjamas below and business on top, haven't we, in terms of Zoom and Skype and MS Teams world. And that's because I have been supporting people for about the last 10 years via things like Skype and Zoom and MS Teams, and the world has now working that way. Yeah, caught up, absolutely, due to COVID. So I'm going to ask you a set of 5 questions. We'll see where we get with them and where they go. Don't feel too hemmed in. You can go wherever you like. So the first question is, so the listeners can get to know you, since I know you so well, is could you tell us who you are, what your job in the NHS is, and how you would describe your disability?
Yep, I can tell you that. So my name's Hen Sloman. I've been working in the NHS for a while, so for about, it'll be coming up to 3 years now. So I'm only newly qualified-ish, and I use they, them pronouns, so that's something I like to mention to everyone. I'm a school nurse now, and I'm currently doing my Skiffon course at Sheffield Hallam University. And I'm also a SAFNA ambassador, and that's the School and Public Health Nurse Association. So they do a lot of work with disability as well, and also just to as a network for the school nursing and public health nurses generally, really. So I work with them as well. And how I would describe myself as neurodiverse. So I just say I'm a neurodiverse person because I also believe that it's not just one thing. Usually it's, it's a spectrum, isn't it? I've been diagnosed with dyslexia. People have mentioned ADHD to me, and that I just use I'm a neurodiverse person. So please watch out for that when you talk to me, really.
Absolutely. And I would class myself as categorize. Don't know what the word is. I would describe myself as a neurodiverse person. Some people say neurodivergent. Some people will say I've got specific learning difficulties, specific learning differences. And that tends to be an umbrella term for dyslexia, dyspraxia, ADD, ADHD, and autism. And there's other little things in there as well, like OCD and sensory processing disorder. And I'm definitely a person who has 3 of those neurodiverse labels, if you want to call them that, or
labels are useful, but there's also, I think it's important to understand that you might be diagnosed with dyslexia, but you might have elements of ADHD or elements of dyspraxia or things like that, which you can't be categorized as because it's not on the assessment, but you do have those things. And I never like learning difficulties because I don't think it's a difficulty. I think it's a positive thing.
Well, that's interesting because often on assessment reports, so for the people out there who don't know how this is done, what happens is people go to a qualified assessor that could be an educational psychologist, a psychologist, a specialist teacher, for example, and often, depending on their qualifications, also alters what they can assess for. Now, interestingly, you said diagnosed, and I would use the word identified, and I wonder if that's got something to do with the fact that you're in the medical profession and I'm not.
That would make sense.
So again, I would say identified because I find that a more positive phrasing rather than diagnosed, as in it's a disease and it's got to be fixed. And not all people who have a disability feel like that, but it is classed as a disability under the Equality Act and a protected characteristic alongside lots of other things like gender, spirituality, religion, pregnancy, age, LGBTQ plus, race and spirituality. So there's 9 protected characteristics. I can never quite remember all of them. That's my neurodiverse brain having a memory issue. So we often call them traits, and it's 66%. I don't know if you know this, Hen. 66% of people who have a neurodiverse profile have 2 or more.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Those conditions or labels or issues, for example.
Understandable.
So it's very important little message there, I think, if I may paraphrase for you, is actually
Sure.
to refer to the person not only in their own pronouns, ask their pronouns or have them on your badge. I've noticed that in the NHS, that's coming in now, with the pronouns, and I've noticed that in the signatures of NHS staff now as well. I use them myself, is actually to use the terminology the person uses to describe their own disability.
Yeah, definitely.
And that may be something that makes you feel comfortable or uncomfortable, but it's what they want to, how they want to refer to their disability, or they might say condition, or they might say need.
Well, as well, they're the expert in it, so we've got to listen to them to be like, okay, this is what you've said you want. I'll listen to that, and you would do that if it was a qualification, if it was something else, you would follow that. So that's how I think of it.
That's quite an interesting concept, because I understand where you're coming from, and I hear it more and more in literature now about the person being the expert. However, there is also this idea that I find very much in the clients and the students I support. They're expert in their own disability and how it affects them, but not necessarily an expert in knowing what the reasonable adjustment might be, or the assistive technology, or the strategy they might be. They might have got a set of skills, but often they're unconscious strategies, or strategies that only applied in quite narrow areas where they could be have transferability and be generalized into other areas. So that's an interesting phrase. So don't assume the person knows what the reasonable adjustments are, or what they might be available. So when we talk about reasonable adjustments, what do you think about reasonable adjustments? That's kind of going straight to question 4, and that's what has been your experiences of how initiatives like Access to Work can help put reasonable adjustments in place to ensure you're not disadvantaged at work. So first of all, I would be very interested, Henning, because you're a school nurse and you work with secondary school children, is that correct?
And primary, yeah.
And primary as well.
5 to 19 we work with.
Okay,
generally.
Because you're doing your training as a Skippen. What's a Skippen course? School?
Skiffen is a specialist community public health. Trying to remember it. See, neurodiverse now.
Yeah. Right. So
specialist community public health
nurse.
Yeah.
Nurse. People just see that and go, oh, it's a school nurse course, but not necessarily.
And health visitors as well do that course as well.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a question 4. What I'd be interested to know what your initiatives like Access to Work, for example.
Yeah.
But how would you describe a reasonable adjustment? So I've asked you, what's a reasonable adjustment to ensure you're not disadvantaged at work? But we're making an assumption that the listeners know what a reasonable adjustment is.
Yeah, and I think that's often the case. As someone who is neurodiverse, I find it difficult to be like, what is reasonable? Well, having flexible working or having my own laptop, is that reasonable to ask your employer? So it's kind of like a difficult conversation. I found Access to Work and all those kind of things actually quite difficult to do, because not only do you have to disclose that you have these things and you might have, unconsciously or consciously discriminated against. Obviously, we try not to do that, but I find the experience of Access to Work difficult, because at the beginning you've got to identify in yourself you're struggling, or you want to be supported in the way that you deserve to be, and empowered to do that. And I think it gives you the opportunity once it's in place, but as a person with dyslexia, tick box and forms and those kind of things, and me putting myself out there of, this is what I find really difficult, that's almost impossible. So I think the Access to Work thing, if it was to me, if I was to do it, I would put it a different way. I'd have it with mind maps, I'd have it with videos on how to do things. And, I don't know everything they offer, so I'm not an expert in it. But once it's in place, you can get hugely supported. And I think it also acts as a backstop, especially for nurses, to be like, say you've got a target or something like that and you don't reach it, you can say, well, this is why this hasn't been reached, because you have a difference than other people. Your mind's set up differently, which is a positive, but can be seen sometimes in the world as a difficulty, or you're slow or something like that. But it's you're just perfect in another way, I would say. With the schools especially, they also have to do things with the dyslexia assessments or neurodiverse assessments, which can take a long time. I think we still have an issue in schools with identifying it, and because they're so early on, it can be really difficult. And I think it's easy to identify in the school children and in myself that there is mental health things that go along with it, because
Mm-hmm.
it's a societal thing. If there's a difference at school, that can impact on your self-esteem, it can impact on all those things. I think you do suffer from that throughout your life, especially if you get diagnosed late. So that's what I see. So I see young people and I tell them they're amazing, because I think neurodiversion is amazing.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
That's a great message to be hearing. And I think there's a couple of things I would like to kind of interject then.
Yep.
We see mental health issues, self-esteem issues, self-confidence issues a lot in the students we support through disabled students allowances, which is in between access to work for the workplace and the support you might get at primary school. And we also see that also because people who are neurodiverse, as you say, might mask or hide what their difficulties are. Often there's strategies in like, well, I'll work a bit longer, or I'll do that at home, or I'll check that. So there's a way of hiding the delay, or that might be not hitting your target, or you might try and present a different face, which is very common in people who have a disability, where for a number of reasons, for societal reasons and the way our society judges disability. So for example, one of the things I always do in my training is I put the symbol of disability up, which is actually a blue background with a person in a wheelchair on, in a white logo. So you might see that in the disabled, they call them disabled parking spaces. Parking space isn't disabled, it's an accessible parking space. And you were talking about that with your forms and access to work. So there needs to be some accessibility. So looking at your website, we've got some, I do some training on that. There's some the accessibility information standard, for example, that's been adopted by the NHS in 2016, which is a brilliant document because it lays out what font size is great, what type of font size, making sure you subtitle videos, make sure you have a transcript for a podcast, for example, and there's lots more. So I'd really signpost people to that. But the mental health need as well is, you don't actually, for access to work, the very first thing is, what do you feel your need is, or is your disability or condition? So you don't actually have to have a formal assessment or identification to apply for access to work. So in that way, it's much more available to people than disabled students allowances, where you have to go through lots of different,
I don't think people are aware of that though. I'm only just learning that now. So every day is a school day.
Yes, absolutely. And only 1% of people who are eligible for access to work actually apply for it as well. So if you have a need, but you don't have to go out and get an assessment and say, and pay that money to have that assessment to say you have dyslexia. Access to work does it that way. And often the thing that, particularly with the NHS, is that the actual access to work process, where you fill in a form, they contact you, you have a quick chat, and it really is 5 to 10 minute quick chat. You have the assessment, they write the form, it gets approved. That is quite cumbersome, but it's a lot easier than an awful lot of others, like disability living allowance or disabled students allowance. But often the problem comes when you're asking for that from then the trust, and that's when the reasonable thing that you talked about becomes an issue. So I'm just going to address that and say I'd love to redress, talking about language a lot here, aren't we? Address reasonable adjustments with access rights. I think if you refocus them as access rights, it's a greater way to look at them. You know, what do I need to access that information? Just like to access a building. So if you've got this symbol that is what people call the disabled parking badge, which I call the accessible parking, actually only 8% of the population are wheelchair users, yet that's our symbol. So I talk about this idea of this subconscious and conscious strategies, but also there's this conscious that you mentioned, conscious and unconscious bias, which is probably a discussion for another podcast. So access rights, you talk about disclosing, I talk about declaring my disability. I think that would maybe something you might want to think about, because you're proud of your neurodiversity and the strengths it gives you, for example. So you talked about things like a laptop and software. Are there any other things that are in place for you as reasonable adjustments through access to work that make sure you're not disadvantaged?
There's strategy training, which has been really helpful. a headset. That has been really useful. And I think when the assessment that you get is very good, and I think if you get a good assessor, then they really can benefit. And I think if anyone is an assessor who's listening to this, then being positive and really, actually wanting to achieve something from it, it can be really beneficial. Because I had a particularly good assessor, and he just made it very clear that, we'll get everything that you need. It's not a problem. I also get training within my trust, which not only is that helpful for me, so that's for other members of my team or other members of the trust generally.
That's
but
awareness training paid for via Access to Work.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Yep.
So that not only benefits me, but the kids I see in school, that is 100% of them have some kind of neurodiversity, really. Well, maybe 95%. And that will then affect how the practitioner works with those people. So I think it's all round great, and it shouldn't be we all need training and this is all difficult. It's actually learning something that's really beneficial in the world. I think I heard
Beneficial for all.
Yeah, because we are all neurodiverse in a way. There's not someone, maybe there's one person who's like, yes, we're strict down the line, but other than that. And I thought I would say an analogy which I heard the other day, which really resonated with me, was we do, like you were saying, we do see disability as wheelchair and things like that. It's like just one day everyone but you woke up with they could breathe underwater. So everyone else can breathe underwater but you. And so you're going around and everything's fine at first, no one's done anything, and then they go, okay, well, this classroom's it's going to be underwater because we can all breathe underwater, so let's make that happen. And then I won't be able to get into that room because I can't breathe underwater. And then they make a shopping centre underwater, and then I can't access that. So it's almost like they would assume that everyone can do that, but then actually you're not able to access it in whatever way. That's not just disability, it's not just wheelchair, it's not just neurodiversion, it's all sorts of things. So let's try not to be underwater, let's include everyone in how we do it. That's just something I use generally.
And reasonable adjustment, that's a really good way of describing reasonable adjustment, would be breathing apparatus so you can get underwater, or a wetsuit so you can get underwater, or wetsuit flippers and breathing apparatus so you can get underwater. Or maybe a live stream from underwater up to land so you can watch it on a screen like we are doing at the moment through COVID. So that would be a reasonable adjustment. My main message is most things are a reasonable adjustment.
What's unreasonable? Nothing, really.
So that's a really good one. So the example that they give is a historic house that needs to build a ramp, and it's going to cost £250,000, and it's a charity.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to do financially for the charity. It's very difficult to do because it's an old building, and it's also very expensive in order to have one person access the building, although I would say there'll be lots of people accessing the building, and that's a whole different podcast about universal design, for example, and having a ramp and it benefiting people in wheelchairs, people doing deliveries. There's like 300,000 accidents a year about people falling down the stairs. You could help to eradicate those. There's so many different ways we could look at the benefits of universal design. And so that's when the law was created, that was the scale it was looking at. And all the case law that's coming through now from the Equality Act in 2010, and it's taken a long time to come through, all the case law is about, you should have put the reasonable adjustments in place, you should have done the training. That's basically, if I was like, to summarize case law, it's about awareness, acceptance, and putting the reasonable adjustments in place. And then people stay in their jobs, people are retained and are happy and have good well-being in their jobs. So,
and they thrive, I suppose. That's
and they thrive. And particularly in these times, we need to hold on to our staff for many different reasons. We needed to hold on to our staff before COVID, but we definitely need, to look at retention and attrition. And one of the rates is, is putting reasonable adjustments in place, and it's heavily subsidised by the Department of Work and Pensions. And that's another thing that a lot of people, I get a lot of conversations with NHS finance people who phone me up and go, gosh, this is a huge package. And I go, yes, but all the training for the individual and the awareness training is at nil cost.
So we need awareness of it, how much it costs.
They need awareness of access to work. Yeah, absolutely. So, and then I'm saying, as the NHS is an employer with more than 249 employees, it would be expected to pay the first £1,000, 20% between £1,000 and £10,000, but after £10,000 to £60,000, they pay nothing. So actually, it's quite a small contribution if you think about how much sick pay you'd be paying for somebody to be off and the cover for them.
Yep.
And the cost, psychological cost to the person and the needs of the organisation. There's, rehiring. If that person leaves, they've had 6 months pay on sick leave and half pay on sick leave, and then the cost of re-employing somebody and advertising and sifting and interviewing is much, much more than the NHS would have to pay maximum. I think it's about, if you work it out, it's about the most they'd ever pay would be about £3,000. And that would be £3,000 for £10,000 worth of stuff, or £3,000 for £60,000 worth of stuff. I mean, it's incredible the amount of support that's available out there. And I think maybe there's a Access to Work podcast coming up as maybe something WEDS want to look at. So I'm aware that we've kind of answered number 2 of what your experiences of working in the NHS are as well. Would you like to add anything on to that question 2? Or are your experiences of working in the NHS?
I've had a mixed bag. I think I've had to develop my own confidence over it. So I looked at it as a really bad thing when I first was diagnosed, and I really struggled at school with my GCSEs and all qualifications I've struggled with. I only just got through school, so that was an interesting time for me. So I've had a mixed thing with the NHS. I think the NHS is particularly good once you know what you're doing with it. So I think it's really, really beneficial for me because it helps the young people that I work with start to see their neurodiversion or disability as a positive thing, because it will make you think differently, and you will be an advantage.
So would you say you were a role model? Do you talk openly with the kids about your dyslexia, ADHD and mental health?
Yeah. Well, you didn't use disclose, did we?
Declare.
I declare to people.
Oh, right. Excellent.
Every single clinic I do, I will say at least once, and you see their faces light up when you talk about it. And I can say, well, I'm also in university now, so I've done two degrees really. I'm in the process, so that's a really positive thing, and it helps connect within your network as well, like people like yourself or other people who think neurodiversion or disability is a great positive, but also that I believe there is still a lot of discrimination against it. I think it is still seen as a negative thing, and it's also still seen as, well, they get more time than I do, or they're lazy, or they're there are lots of things that I can't do my job because.
Well, I'm just going to interject there and just let everybody know that the Chief Nursing Officer, Ruth May, has dyslexia, and we have a set of videos which Hen has contributed to, called Diverse Nurses, and it is about people sharing the strengths and the benefits of employing a neurodiverse nurse. So if people want to have a look over there, definitely go and have a look over there, and we'll challenge some of those myths that
I think it's something that really it is important it changes. I think it's not a disability, it's
a different ability.
A different ability, and I'd like the way we view vulnerable children, it's actually they're valued children. So the language again needs to do a bit of changing to be a bit more of a positive. I think the things you can get out of people who have a learning disability or disability generally, the opportunities are endless with that, and we haven't utilized it, so we don't know what could happen,
So what we're saying there is we're answering question 3 as well, which was, have you formally told people at work you have a disability, often referred to as disclosure? So we've talked about it in terms of declaring. Quite interestingly, I was talking to somebody a couple of years ago, and we were talking about sometimes feeling like we have to come out as a disabled person in a similar way that people with the LGBTQIA plus community do. It kind of, so you can be outed as a disabled person if you've only maybe told your manager, and then they go, oh, here's your special blue paper, here you are, or shall I write that down for you? And then all of a sudden you're thinking, oh my gosh, I've just told everybody what my issues are. And I was wondering what your feelings about that were.
I think it's a very similar feeling. I obviously have to come out at some point so that people can use my preferred pronouns, and kind of actually understand that as well, because that's this thing that we have to deal with young people, and just generally in the NHS, people are trans, people are gay, people are bisexual, all those kind of things. So it's almost like a bit of a feeling when you haven't told someone and it's in the back of your mind and you're like, oh right, okay, I have to tell them now, and you wait and wait and it's hard. But actually I view it as it's an opportunity to know you better, and to actually it's an opportunity to understand how I go through the world differently. And that's a positive for a manager and for colleagues as well, because it's not a difficulty being trans or non-binary. It's not, and it just gives you a different opportunity in the world, and you see things differently. And I just think if we saw things more as an opportunity than a difficulty, then that would be good.
And then the barriers are removed as well, because then we see opportunities. So often I have a conversation with them, and I tend to get all the reasons why it can't happen.
Yeah.
And lots of no's. And I say, well, actually, we only need one reason why it can happen. We talk about diversity, we talk about equality, diversity, and inclusion a lot. We've even got departments and hospitals for it, for example. And I think that diversity, we have to represent the patients. So I say we, like I'm a nurse, an honorary nurse, Teresa Chin from We Nurses Call. I'm married to a public health nurse, palliative care nurse. So I feel like, and I mainly support nurses in the workplace and student nurses on degrees and masters and PhDs, for example. So I do apologise for the we there, but yeah, that's absolutely, the patients that people nurse are from diverse backgrounds with diverse needs, and we need to represent those people that you guys are nursing.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And the more you understand it, the more you can understand other people. And in a caring profession, that's priceless, really. And to understand that there is actually quite a lot of intersection between disability and LGBT, or disability and like being black or something like that. That there are intersections between that, and that's something that I think should be identified as well. Is we all have different elements to us. We're not categorized into one thing. And I would say as well, with pronouns particularly, I think that's something that's really new in the NHS and people find very difficult. And language as well with regards to disability. Well, I've got a dog, and if when I go walking with her, someone will say, oh, he's such a handsome boy, or something like that. I say, no, she's actually, it's a she. And there's no problem with saying that. And then the person just goes, oh yeah, she's sweet, isn't she? She's lovely. And that is not an issue. We don't say, oh, but I'm going to say all the wrong things, and it's all really difficult. And it's the same with disability. If someone says dyslexia, or if someone says identify, or the words we've used, it's actually just swapping it out, and you can just be like, oh, sorry, I got that wrong. It's this, and then move on. There's no one's extremely precious about that. And if you are working towards it, then that's the thing to kind of focus
being
on.
Seen to make the effort as well. It's like patients again. My husband works in palliative care, and he often calls his patients Mrs. Brown or Mr. Brown, and they like to be referred to in that way. And then the younger generation prefer their first names, or maybe you're right, mate, or how are you doing today, and all of that kind of stuff. And just to break down some of those barriers when they are happy with those kind of references. And then the family might be called, say, oh, shall I go and get mum? Right, mum, do you want to come in? Or it might be Mrs. Pace, come in, or it might be Kerry. And actually, when I'm at the hospital and appointments all the time due to my health, and they often say, what do you want me to refer to you as? And I always say, oh, call me Kerry.
And I think that is something that's been in place all the time. I've done work with the elderly as well, not just young people. And there'll be someone called Eddie, but everyone calls him Tom. And but we don't see that as a thing, because it's been going for a long time. And then you'll be talking to someone else, you say, oh, Tom, oh, sorry, that's this person, and it's fine. It's always been there. We're just, some of the movements are coming out a bit differently.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm having to learn your pronouns. Now, my daughter has a friend who's transitioning, and I've had to relearn their pronouns and relearn their name. And sometimes I get it wrong. And I say, oh, sorry. So for example, I'll come in and go, oh, what are you girls doing? Sorry, what are you guys doing? Or, oh, sorry, what are you two doing? And it's just about me. And my daughter's friend always says, oh, thanks very much. Thanks for, always thanks me for correcting myself, rather like going out there and going, oh, I said the wrong pronoun. Oh my God, what do I do now?
Well, it's feeling seen, isn't it? I think we all want to feel seen. And I think that's the same with disability. I think that's the same with dyslexia. It's like when someone says to me, oh, here's the paper that means you can read something. That makes me feel really loved in the world. That makes me feel really cared about and more vital to the employment or the trust or something like that. And mine has been particularly good with mine. I'm currently in Derbyshire Community Health Service. That's what I'm in currently. And the support I've received there is great. And you feel like I've disclosed something that's difficult. You know, I'm non-binary and disabled and all those things. And they've been like, great, you know. And I've forms, gender, and it says male, female, and I'm like, oh, it's not really what I do. Oh, well, okay, we'll fill in something else. Doesn't matter. Next question.
Yeah.
And I think, it's not a problem. It's an opportunity again.
And you can have those conversations. And if you're not knowledgeable, ask those conversations. Say, you know, can I ask you some questions? I'm not very knowledgeable on this topic. Can I ask you some questions? And then when somebody asks me that, they're like, the first thing they say is, what is dyspraxia? And I'm like, fab, I've got a great opportunity here to educate some people. Sensory processing disorder, what does that mean? And I love that opportunity to say, well, actually, what you can do to help me would be actually, or if I come in and start turning the lights down and asking people to move out the chair because I want to be in a particular chair and in a particular place in the room because of light and smell and touch and heat, then, you know, please allow me to do that and not make a fuss when I do it and ask lots of questions, because I've told you that's what's going to happen.
And that's personal to you as well. That's your that is how it's for you. I think some people don't like to be asked, and we do have the joyous thing of Google these days. You know, if someone seems a bit like, oh, they do seem like they don't really want to talk about it, or it's difficult to bring up, just Google it. Just Google, you know, how to refer to a non-binary person, or how to talk about race, or how to, you know, do those things. We have the accessibility of the internet now.
Yeah, and I've got to plug Twitter because we both love Twitter. So I'm at Diverse Learners, all one word with a capital D and a capital L on Twitter. And I take part in tweet chats. I do 3 positives, which is again about reframing your day more positively. And I started that with my 2 kids who both have dyspraxia, sensory processing disorder. One has ADD and one has mental health issues, who came home from school, who didn't have a school nurse, you know, came home from school, and I'd say, how's your day? And I'd get this deluge of negativity and the things that haven't gone well and the things that have been made them feel not included and not accepted. And so we did this thing called 3 positives, where, you know, tell me 3 good things about the day. And sometimes it was like, I enjoyed the lunch you packed me. You know, I got somewhere on time and I answered a question. It can be tiny, but there were huge things. And what that did is then it reframed school as a positive, because it was heartbreaking for me as a mother to come home, have them come home and tell them all the things that I can't have any control over at school. So we do the 3 positives each day where we reframe things. And common themes are about fresh bed sheets, walking, cuddling the dog or the cat, and food and
especially
TV
at
programs.
the moment as well, isn't it? It's really important. I think I try and ask the team I'm in the 3 positives, or ask at my dinner table as the conversation and things like that. And that's something I've taken from like yourself. I do try and contribute, but oftentimes I'm like, oh, I've had a really bad day, I can't do it.
Absolutely. And that's the days where, you know, they might be tiny little achievements. And see, the thing is, and that's about reframing and language again. So we keep coming round to the same kind of themes. And that's actually quite a neurodiverse thing. Not
I
necessarily
can't keep on topic.
You know, you go all over the place, you make connections where other people are making connections. So we're jumping from question 5 to 1, and people are like going, how can that happen? But that's great, that holistic approach. And, you know, compassionate and seeing those connections are really useful for our, not only to support patients, but also as a leader. So I actually think a lot of neurodiverse people would, if they had the opportunity, i.e. an alternative way of expressing their learning, so not always a written exam that is timed, would be great leaders, because they have a lot of the natural qualities. So if you look at Helen Bevan's thread on Twitter about all the qualities, you know, of big picture thinking and, you know, compassion and enthusiasm and, you know, all of those characteristics, they are actually listed as very common characteristics of people who have a neurodiverse profile. But there, see, another tangent, but coming back again.
But if you, it's also, you know, in healthcare especially, we identify that lived experience is the best thing and one of the best things to do. And if you're a manager and a leader and you have dyslexia or you have dyspraxia, then you've got lived experience of that. So anyone you come across in the future, or you'll be like, oh, can we make sure that this new building has this? You know, that kind of thing. They have lived experience, so it's in the forefront of your mind. It's not something.
Or this
that
form
you have to
has
learn
male,
about.
female, other,
Yeah,
or prefer not to say, for example.
Yeah.
Or this form is actually available spoken. This form is available, if you phone us up, somebody will fill it in for you. This form is actually compatible with the software, like dictation software and software that reads to you. And so often they're not.
And we're usually quite passionate, as you can tell from us as well. We're quite passionate about it, and we're really excited about it. And I talk to anyone about dyslexia, I can talk about for 5 days kind of thing.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. And that passion, this is what we need. Again, that's what you need from a leader. That's what you need from your staff. So anyway, we'll get over. I will ask question 5. We've probably answered it throughout. We'll go, oh, that's done. But I'll ask it anyway. So we have some sort of form and structure to these podcasts. So based on your experiences and insights, which you have many, what advice would you offer to people who have disabilities and managers in the NHS for greater inclusiveness and removing barriers in the workplace? Now, just to let everybody know, we have given everybody a copy of these questions when they agreed to do the podcast. So people have had a chance to see these, which again is good practice. If you've got any questions or any an agenda for a meeting, make sure you give them in advance. So, Hen, question 5.
I would say identify it in yourself. So do some self-reflection of what you find difficult, what you find really good. You know, look at your strengths. You do have strengths. It makes you feel like you don't, but you do. And I think it's an empowering thing to do. And on my first day of any role, I said, or before really, because you have to disclose it. I disclose it at the beginning, like the equalities things. So declare, sorry.
No, you just said that you wanted to start using declare, so I thought I'd throw that one in.
I like declare.
It wasn't a criticism.
I'll shout it from the rooftops. I'll declare it any way you want. So so you have to do it as a tick box anyway for when you're applying for the job. And then
and then you're guaranteed an interview, aren't you? If you've got the 2 tick schemes, you're guaranteed an interview. You have to meet the essential criteria. So you can't just get given this idea. This is why I'm putting it out there, because people go, oh, you just get given it. So, well, they don't necessarily have that voice, but in my head, that's how that voice sounds, which I think is important for people to know, that we get told these things so often that they become a narrative. So if you have the 2 tick scheme and you're your employer, you are guaranteed an interview if you meet the essential criteria. So often, as somebody who is an interviewer and does sift through lots and lots of applications, often if everybody's got the essential criteria, we then look at the desirable criteria. And if you haven't got the desirable criteria, you might then be discarded into the pile that says, oh, not applicable for this job, even though you've got the essential criteria. And the idea is that then if you have the essential criteria but not the desirable, it doesn't matter so much, because you were guaranteed an interview. Equally, it recognises that disabled people and people with disabilities don't necessarily have the opportunities other people have due to ill health, due to different schooling, due to not being able to perform your GCSEs, like you said, don't actually have those opportunities to obtain those desirable criteria.
Yeah, and it's also, you know, trying to stick with the question.
I know, I just realised, I thought I've transgressed again.
Well, it's also by saying, then your manager can get the best out of you, and your team will improve, and the outcomes will improve, and the service will improve. So actually, you declaring it and trying to get the support in there is something that you're also doing for patients. You're actually doing something huge. And that's what I try and do is, if someone knows someone who's non-binary in the workplace, or has dyslexia, learning disability, or is disabled, then it makes everyone else seem less different. So you know, ADHD, okay, they know me in the office who goes on, and and has these quirks or traits, if you like, and then they know how to deal with the young person. And that can be your manager as well. I think managers should proactively say at the beginning is there anything that you think I should be aware of, so that I can help you thrive as a manager and I can support you, because a manager is managing you, and managing all parts of you, and you're giving them an opportunity to know you better. And I think that is just vital in management and generally with colleagues. I find out people have got dyslexia in my work, and they're like, and I've said, have you applied for this? Have you done this? Oh, if you do it like this, you could do it half the time. And they're always like, I'm really glad to hear that, because we often don't have the support that we need. And I think I'd like to see that changed, really.
Fabulous. We've had a fantastic conversation and hopefully people have learned a lot. I think your message of, knowing the whole person and being able to support the whole person and bringing your whole self to work is actually a theme that is mentioned in the NHS, but maybe not necessarily so much with somebody who has a disability. And that idea of intersectionality that we've had, where you can be more than one category of diversity and inclusion, is really important. And again, we're going to look at.
Exciting.
Yes, it is exciting. Knowing people, having those different perspectives, can only find solutions and work creatively and work more effectively and efficiently. Fabulous, Hens. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to say stop now, because otherwise we'll carry on, as you say, for your 5 days, and I'm quite happy to go along with you and discuss that. So thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate that. Just let everybody know what your Twitter name is.
It's just Hen Sloman, which is HENSLOMAN, and then you'll be able to find me. And if you have questions on what we talked about, I'm happy to answer them. And you'll see me and Kerry chatting on there anyway. So, and we do a lot of general promotion and awareness of these things. So follow us, and especially Kerry, she does excellent work with what she does. So yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions or discuss anything with anyone.
Fabulous. Putting your money where your mouth is, as they say, which again, if you've got dyslexia, is something that doesn't really make sense. So basically, say, doing what you say you'll do. Okay, then. Lots of love to you. Take care. Keep safe. And thanks for all you're doing at the moment. And I'll see you soon.
Yeah, thanks very much for your time.